Here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome back to the second half hour of the Casey Ingram Show. We had a wonderful first half with Element Trio, who are going to be here in Stuart performing their debut performance, and don't want to miss that. But next up, we have another wonderful show on tap, and a really important one. And folks, you know how much we have our water issues here in Florida, especially here on the Treasure Coast. There's always so much going on, and we're doing so much to try and clear the water up. And Dr. Brandon Schuler is the Executive Director of American Water Security Project, and he'll be joining us here by phone here in just a second and telling us a little bit more about his organization. In the meantime, I want to remind everybody that the best kept secret in Martin County is down in the pocket. It's in Port Salerno, and it's the Fish House Art Center. You can give them a call at 772-221-5482 or look them up online before you head out, thefishhouseartcenter.com. There's just everything there for the entire family. So if you have people in from spring break that are out of town, you want to show them a little bit of fun here in Martin County, you want to take them down to the pocket and take them to the Fish House Art Center. Explore the boardwalk. You can look at the local artists. They have an Airbnb. You can stay right there. Art gallery, boat charters, marina, craft and creamery, craft beers, wine, 24 flavors of ice cream. You can rent bikes, paddle boards. There's just something there literally for everybody. So give them a call, fishhouseartcenter.com. And also remember, they have that marina. You can even boat there and rent a dock slip. And also Indiantown Marina. It is South Florida's best boat storage facility. It's located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway, and honestly, folks, it is the best protected hurricane hole, in my opinion, around, because it's inland, it's on the Okeechobee Waterway, super safe, and it's not too early to reserve your spot today so you have peace of mind throughout the hurricane season that should a hurricane come, and we know we get them, you'll have a safe place to store your boat. And I can tell you that once a hurricane is named, you're not going to find a place in town. So get your reservation today, and then you don't have to worry about it. And also, they're do-it-yourself and full-service boat yard, so any work you need done, you can have it done out there. Give them a call at 772-631-3272. That's 631-3272. So on the line with me right now, we have Dr. Brandon Schuler. He's the Executive Director with American Water Security Project. How are you doing today, Dr. Schuler?
I'm doing great, Casey. Thanks for having me. I have to say it's a little intimidating following a group as beautiful and uplifting as Elemental to talk about wastewater, but I appreciate the time on your show.
They certainly are, and I'm just as excited to have you because this is a topic that is so incredibly important, and it's always in the news here locally, and I know it is everywhere else, but I'm sure, as you can imagine, that people pay attention to really what's in their backyard the most, and you don't always realize this is really a nationwide crisis. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and American Water Security Project.
Yes, so the American Water Security Project is a group that we started about 3 years ago with Dr. Peter Burrill, who's up in the Indian River Lagoon, and someone who has since gone on to bigger and better things, Terry Gibson, who is local to Martin County. I did a film with a group of my students in St. Petersburg. I was teaching at University of South Florida, St. Pete at the time. And we had incredible sewage issues here. In 2016 and 2017, we dumped a little over 1 billion gallons of raw and partially treated sewage into Tampa Bay. And from there, we had some funders reach out to us and ask if we could actually look at this, as you said, as a statewide issue because it affects all Florida. What we put in our waters here in Tampa Bay affects waters ubiquitously across Florida and our tax base, right?
Right.
So we wanted to turn around and start working with the legislators, started educating constituents and citizens about the threats of wastewater, septic system, and the confounding nature of even climate change on these issues. And American Water Security Project was born late 2018, December 2018. And since then, even as a small shop, we've kind of punched consistently above our weight and have had some great successes in Florida in protecting our water. And I think my favorite part is now we have folks and groups that are talking about wastewater issues who are taking our talking points and some of the stuff that we worked on and kind of force amplifying our message. So we've been very, very happy with the message that we've been able to get out. Unfortunately, we have to spread that message, but by getting our message out, we've actually had folks starting to work very hard to find solutions for wastewater in our waters.
Well, I'm happy to do that here again, folks. We are speaking with Dr. Brandon Schuler. He's the Executive Director of American Water Security Project, and he is one of two of the brainchildren behind this wonderful organization. They're water conservationists, outdoorsmen, and scientists. Dr. Schuler grew up close to the water as an avid fisher and surfer, always had deep appreciation of the nation's waterways and shorelines and the need to protect them and live in harmony with nature. In 2016, after discovering the lengths to which St. Petersburg, Florida would go to avoid badly needed infrastructure fixes and experiencing the cost of untreated sewage on human health and coastal ecosystems, Dr. Schuler dedicated himself to advancing solutions and funding for wastewater treatment improvements. From his experience as a professor, a writer, and outdoorsman, Dr. Schuler seeks to understand and balance the interconnectedness of our natural habits, our communities, or our habitats, communities, and the symbiotic nature of our planet. He's recognized the need for Florida citizens to take control of Florida's wastewater crisis. His public education efforts contributed to a $326 million federal court issuing a consent decree against the city of St. Petersburg that requires them to make the necessary upgrades in a timely fashion. Dr. Schuler and Mr. Mante are now leveraging their experiences and successes to launch a nationwide campaign that aims to encourage municipalities to address their sewage discharge problems head-on and institute the requisite sewage infrastructural upgrades before the nation's world-famous rivers and coast and its economic lifeblood are irrevocably damaged. You've taken on quite a bit there, Dr. Schuler, and first of all, I got to say thank you. The issues that you were talking about in St. Petersburg could be the same headlines right here on the Treasure Coast. We have our beautiful estuaries. It's one of the most diverse estuaries in the world here, the Indian River Lagoon, and yet every year we have bacterial warnings in the water, regardless of discharges, because of these wastewater and sewage and runoff. So certainly a hugely important effort that you're doing. And why is wastewater such a huge pollution problem in this state, and why is it still getting worse after all this time with all this water around us?
That is a great question, and that's it, because, Casey, when you really look at the issue, it's simply a plumbing issue that needs some pipes, a couple of screws, and a couple of wrenches, and guys to go out and ladies to go out and fix this. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, that's not the real answer. That's kind of the flippant answer. It's just a plumbing issue, right? When you kind of look down at it and you kind of break down to the issue, the average human, just you, myself, and the listener on there, we produce about 25 gallons of water waste a day that carries out our gray water, which is our washing water and stuff like that, and then the stuff that we flush down the toilet. And as we do that, we're creating a huge issue. And the problem that we have in Florida is a blessing and a problem. We're loving Florida to death, right? Everybody loves Florida. They want to move here because of our, no income tax. We've got sunshine most of the time. We do have beautiful waters with some underlying issues in it. And we have a new 1,000 new Floridians moving into the state a day. And so we have a couple of confounding issues with this, right, and why wastewater becomes an issue. So 1972, Clean Water Act was passed. All these municipalities had to do it. And to kind of put this into context of how long it took communities to actually catch up with what the Clean Water Act wanted them to do with wastewater treatment plants, Mississippi, who we would assume is a fairly large U.S. metropolitan area that would be cutting edge of stuff, until 1994, they still dumped their raw sewage straight into the Mississippi.
Oh, my goodness.
So you're looking at, that 30 years ago, we're in after 2020, time has kind of shrunk into it's all yesterday. But you have that issue. But what you had with the state of Florida was a lot of our wastewater treatment facilities were put in right after that 1972. They were put in between 70 and 80. And as they came in, most of the infrastructure material that builds our wastewater treatment plants, they actually only have a lifespan of 30 to 50 years, depending on whom you speak to. Well, do the math from 72 to now, we're getting close to that 50-year mark. And it's an expensive upgrade to fix and repair our wastewater infrastructure facilities. But it's also not a sexy one for a politician to get their political will behind, because, to be honest, who wants to put their name on a wastewater treatment facility? That's not necessarily the best political move for someone's career. And then when you're fixing those issues, even after the lawsuit that we saw in St. Pete, that the community largely got behind us, once they start to realize, oh, you're digging up the most traveled thoroughfare in our city, and you're blocking off 2 lanes of 4 lanes, and it's taking me an hour to get to work, it creates snarl that some folks they start to get upset. They don't want sewage in their water, yet at the same time, they don't want their streets tied up and not being able to get to school. So that's looking at kind of the infrastructure part of this. The other part is, with these new 1,000 Floridians coming in a day, we've got to treat that extra 25,000 gallons that they're bringing to the wastewater treatment facility. They're increasing the capacity need for the treatment facilities that they can't keep up with, and communities don't necessarily have the money to build out the infrastructure to support these folks. But then at the same time, we have a development issue that we have to house these folks. So you have developers that will go out and build new communities in places that are not treated by centralized wastewater facilities. So what they do is they put them on a septic tank. Well, that becomes super confounding in the state of Florida, because once we have a septic tank and up and down the entire length of the Indian River Lagoon, you have septic tank usage, that as we have rising water tables from sea level rise, and NOAA put out a great technical report a couple of weeks ago, maybe to a month now, talking about sea level rise in the state of Florida. There was a report done in Miami-Dade a few years ago that at a high tide, we're not talking about a king tide, we're not talking about a bull tide, we're not talking about some special event. At a normal high tide, 90% of their septic tanks are underwater.
Oh, my.
Once those septic tanks are underwater, they're putting out nutrients that feed these bacterial blooms. And on top of the discharges, they feed, we're giving them a superfood because the fiber in human waste actually is fed on by these HABs a lot more efficiently. And once we have climate change on top of that, and we're adding heat into that system, well, you've got a chemistry project in front of you, a biological chemistry project in front of you, that we end up seeing as every color rainbow algae and stuff that doesn't allow us to love our water. And it actually hurts our real estate cost because folks don't necessarily want to live there. And where it really hurts is it hurts on our tourism dollars, because when CNN picks up these stories and sees them, people are like, well, you know what, let's go to Orange Beach or Gulf Shores or somewhere that we don't have to deal with Florida's issues.
Dr. Schuler, if I can interrupt for 1 second,
Yes.
You're just speaking to our heart here on the Treasure Coast. I mean, this happened a couple years ago right here. Stewart was ground zero for blue-green algae, and it was horrific. We lost animals that drank from the water. They died. The algae, the blue-green algae, smelled so bad it would gag you, and it was horrific for us during the summer. And we did get national news, and it's not the kind of news you want, but it's also the kind of news that maybe can help you and change things to make things better down the road. But I'm telling you, here on the Treasure Coast, we're so glad to have your organization, you out there fighting to clean these kinds of things up, because it really is a very serious health issue.
It is, and I can't speak to the pathological issues, the pathogen issues to it, but scientists does support. I know y'all had a few dead dogs that drank from the water over there. Some of these HABs release neurotoxins that affect the human breathing. It protects human breathing, affects human breathing. And, when you get some of these guys, it's hard to breathe. I mean, you look at red tide events, which is part of this, and it becomes a cytotoxin that actually can cause severe human health issues. So there's a lot to do here.
There really is. How serious do you see the wastewater pollution problem throughout the Indian River Lagoon?
Well, it's ubiquitous, because across the entire length of the lagoon, because you have so many septic tanks that are, a high rain event, a wet weather event. In the end, a septic tank is designed to fail. It puts its nutrient load out into the surrounding spillway, and when it does, if you have a rising water table or a wet rain event, those nutrients wash into the Indian River Lagoon and contribute to this. And then at the same time, you also have older wastewater treatment facilities that will spill, and unfortunately they typically don't get the news because people don't want to talk about it. But the great issue is Loxahatchee Inlet is actually one of the kind of a success story. They have moved their treatment facilities to what is called tertiary treatment or advanced wastewater treatment. that the water that comes out of the other side of that treatment facility, or if it even spills after it's been treated, is just water that, for technical purposes, one smaller step forward could actually be drank by human consumption. So, as the state moves toward AWT, which the state should be doing, the legislators should mandate that, and the FDEP should build policies to allow us all to go to AWT. That's the future of wastewater treatment, and it's what fixes the Indian River Lagoon and takes some of the stress from at least human waste off of the table.
Dr. Schuler, I have a Brent Wallenberg, and he's tuned into the show previously and has a very similar comment. It's not just sewage, it's pesticide, herbicides, asphalt, unburnt gas, and more being preserved in zero oxygen acid environment. He has a lengthy comment here, but in the end, he said putting calcium carbonate in deep water will just create an algae bloom from hell. But he's always contemplated putting shells back into the shores of the lagoon, because at a time when they used them, they took them out of the river and out of the shoreline to build roads. And he feels like there's a shortage of the calcium carbonate shells. I think his last comment was misstated. He wants to put calcium back in the water. What do you think about that?
I'm not going to speak to that, honestly, because, I don't know the scientific background and basis for that. Calcium carbonate would be, that's on shellfish. That's part of their shell, and it's in our reef systems.
Right.
But I'm not going to speak to the science and the efficacy of that as a solution for this.
Right. What's the biggest systemic obstacle to treating and recycling wastewater optimally?
Ask me that one more time.
Sure. What's the biggest systemic obstacle to treating and recycling wastewater optimally?
Money. Plain and simple, money. When we look at the state of Florida, and this report was 2018, so it's 2018 dollars, the Society of American Civil Engineers did a report and found that for Florida in 2018 populations and for current just waste production, we were at an $18.6 billion shortfall to bringing all of our systems up to current capacity of what they do. And that's not even looking at moving toward an advanced wastewater treatment facility that actually takes the nitrogen and phosphorus, the nutrients that feed harmful algal blooms, completely out of the system. Most of the time, what you get in the purple pipes and you get from non-potable reuse water are still super high in nitrogen and phosphorus. The only way we can fix this is money, and we do have to cheer the DeSantis administration, because they have seriously, from his 2019 executive order where he wanted to protect Florida's waterways and environment, the Florida legislative body has answered the call to get us that money. But if you're looking at the American Civil Engineers report that says we have an $18.6 billion shortfall, before the DeSantis administration, historically for wastewater facilities, we had like a $50 million a year budget.
Okay.
Oof. Over his 3 years, we've appropriated about $1.2 billion.
Wow. He's increased it.
Increased it, and we're still
way short,
light years away from there. And it will require federal funding assistance, and there is money out there for communities, but we're looking at nationwide. We're probably looking close to $1 trillion. Definitely a lot of zeros after the billion to actually bring folks to just capacity. And if we're being selfish and just looking at the state of Florida, you could probably triple or quadruple that 18.6 amount to get us to where we need to be.
And Dr. Schuler, that's really the tricky part here, is there's so many different areas across the nation that are battling for the same pot of funds. And, it can only go so far. And we're not the only ones that are experiencing, just travesties when it comes to water quality. We've certainly heard some about in Flint, not necessarily sewage, but I think they had old pipes that were full of iron that would turn the water poisonous for the people. But you hear about these blue-green algae tide blooms all over the country. It's really something everybody's fighting for these dollars. When you talk about retrofitting a wastewater treatment plant, let me say even moving. I have to tell you, right here in Fort Pierce, they have a wastewater treatment plant right on the inlet, very close to the ocean. Amazing piece of property, and it's kind of shocking to see there's a wastewater treatment plant there. But through the years, Fort Pierce has now voted, and they made the decision to move this water treatment plant. It's going to take some time, over a few years, to do that. But if communities are able to move, do you know about? I know I'm throwing this out, and it probably depends on the community, but we talked about money in a nutshell for all the projects. But what about just one wastewater treatment? How much money does a community like Stewart or Fort Pierce have to think about having before they can correct the problem?
Yeah, okay, so that's a loaded question because not all wastewater treatment facilities are the same. It really depends on the community size. What is their septic load? What is their business load and industrial load? Are they treating their stormwater through their treatment facilities as well? So to nail that down, you're looking at a very hard. You have way too many factors to nail that down for an individual one. I can speak to through the Clean Waterways Act. All communities in the state of Florida now have to do a comprehensive water management plan that looks at this, and I can speak a little more definitively about specifically what they're looking at. In St. Pete, for us to bring ourselves to capacity and to get to where we are, and you have to put this into context, St. Pete only has a population of between 250 to 300,000 folks. We're looking at a $1.3 billion fix to get us to capacity. That's for wastewater treatment facilities, in retrofitting all your piping and stuff. So there's a lot that goes in to answer your question, but you're looking at multi-millions, in the triple-digit millions, for most single wastewater treatment facility plants.
What's the best example of a fully optimized wastewater treatment system?
So one that has tertiary, right? So advanced wastewater treatment, where they treat it three ways. They go through, they take the nutrients out, they take the human waste out, they take all of that, and they actually treat it down to a level that when it comes out, and people always get grossed out by it because it's toilet to tap, it's astronaut water, whatever water you want to call it. On the other end, it's actually potable where humans can consume it. And everybody's like, well, that's gross, I'm not drinking wastewater. When at the end of the day, every drop of water that you drink has already been through some dinosaurs or animals' urinary tract and digestive system. So it's already been there. And we can treat this. And that's the ultimate way to go, is to get us to AWT, where we're treating this water on the backside that's potable and we can use it. And we don't necessarily have to put that into our drinking water delivery systems. We can just return that back into the environment with the safe assumption that we're not going to hurt the environment with high levels of nutrients and phosphorus that lead to our harmful algal blooms.
Right.
And we can actually get us there. It just gets back to that money issue.
Again, we're speaking with Dr. Brandon Schuler. He is the Executive Director of the American Water Security Project. Folks, I highly recommend you go online and check out their website. There's a lot of information on there we're going to talk about here in a minute, but it's AWS, American Water Security, awsproject.org. Dr. Schuler, what about the cost to home and business owners either wanting to or being asked to get rid of their septic tanks and hook up to a sewer system?
So there's help for that. There's a couple of home warranty groups that actually help you convert from septic to sewer. They'll cover some of your costs, especially your lateral lines, which connect you to your main sewage system. The cost to upgrade from septic to main sewage is usually about $9,000 to $12,000, and that's a rough figure because it depends on community. What is the central septic to you? What does central sewage to you look like? How easy is it to access? But for the homeowner and business owner to get to there, unless they're industrial, which is a whole different can of worms, you're looking at $9,000 to $12,000. And there are a number of home warranty folks that do that. But there's also, I believe, Doug Howard itself, the Solar Energy Loan Fund. I believe they're actually doing low-cost, low-credit loans for folks that are reaching out to convert from septic to sewer to help them kind of mitigate the cost and lower the cost that they're going to have to do to upgrade themselves. And it is, when we get communities moving to septic to sewage, it's kind of a community initiative that we need to look at. And HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, has programs that septic to sewage can get you over to. And it's just going out and finding the money and then having the financial fortitude to go out there and take on the money to upgrade from septic to sewage.
It always comes back to money, doesn't it? But
it does. It does, and it's the simple plumbing issue. I mean, it is just literally a couple of PVC pipes and wrenches and hacksaws, and you can get it done, but it's just getting us there.
It truly is. And I know the state is working hard as well. Senator Harrell was in here last week, and, they're always trying to get some sort of matching funding, and she talked about that, some more of that this year for communities. If communities decide to upgrade their septic systems to sewer, we all have to come up with money, but at least the state is doing what it can. It's the best that it can to help kick in funds as well. So there's sources out there. We just have to find them. And, I have to ask you just personally here, with all the discharges and the lagoon health that we've had, poor lagoon health, it's a big issue to us, and it seems like it's in the news every day, and we know it has hit national news. You're over in St. Pete, the other side of the state, over by Tampa. How much did you hear about our water issues? And you're in the industry, so you probably heard more than the average guy. But, was it advertised over there? I mean, was it in front page news of what's happening here on the Treasure Coast, or is it?
It is. No, it is, because, it affects us all in Florida, right? It hurts our tourism business. It hurts our real estate business. It hurts our head and bed taxes because folks don't want to come. It was news. And, it wasn't just that. I'm in Florida for a reason. I'm an eighth-generation Texan who is in Florida. I'm a surfer. I was a Navy diver. I fished. I was a fishing guide for 15 years, have books on fishing. And I got to the point that I was excited that I get to fish the famed Mosquito Lagoon. I get to fish the famed Indian River Lagoon, Banana Creek, all these places. Right. And unfortunately, some of this is selfish. I'm a type 1 diabetic. And when fecal bacteria levels in our waterways are in the 200 to 300 parts per million, where the EPA determines that 70 parts is detrimental to human health, I actually have to stop and take a breath and look if I'm going to lose a toe or a foot or get myself ill getting in this water because my immune system's compromised. And some of this is selfish. And yes, you made national news, and we talked about it over here because at the end of the day, to fix both coasts comes from the same pot of state water, right. State money. Right. And we just have to make sure that we're getting that message out there and doing it.
Do you think the lagoon's health will ever return?
Yes, it can. Tampa Bay is a national success in the fact that from the 1950s to the 1990s, there was a huge loss of seagrass, which you guys are experiencing in the IRL.
Right.
And in that time, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program really kind of took it underneath their belt to fix this. And by 2000s, it returned themselves to 1950s seagrass coverage in the bay. And it took communities moving to from septic to sewage to actually fixing and upgrading, although we had some issues in the tens with St. Pete's wastewater systems. But with money thrown at it, with political will to do it, and constituents making sure that their elected officials are doing the things that they need to do to make sure that there's policies that protect our waters, absolutely the Indian River Lagoon can return back to the splendor it was.
Thank you, Dr.
In the 1950s.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon Schuler, Executive Director with American Water Security Project, AWSproject.org. Special shout out to Terry Gibson. He is their Government Affairs Director who helped make this show happen. And folks, go through their website. You'll see some really great publications, Saving Our Surf from Sewage and Pollution, and Warming Climate Threatens Florida's Claim to Title of Fishing Capital of the World, and so much more. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Schuler.
All right, Casey, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.